I sing praise to the unseen, to the innumerable creatures of the aquifer who live in deep tunnels and vast caverns, who swim in immeasurable flow. The image of water. There was a time in my life when I went through a real tough stretch, and at that point I started to dream about water. A huge amount of water here, there, from the lake where I was born, on Moana on the west coast. I was dreaming water all over the show. And I actually went down into the waters of my own soul, the deep waters of my soul.
The springs of Te Waikoropupū are of Aotearoa, New Zealand's greatest natural treasures. Crystal clear waters surge from beneath the earth and visited by almost 100,000 people per year. Sadly, these springs are under lethal threat. Nitrate leaching from intensive dairy farming threatens the tiny creatures that cleanse these crystalline waters.
Well, the major pressure on Te Waikoropupū Springs is it's nitrogen fertiliser, and farmers are intensifying their farming. It makes its way down through the rocks, underneath, through rivers and downwards into the aquifer. There's this enormous aquifer under the Takaka Valley, a huge marble aquifer, the biggest marble aquifer in New Zealand by far. It's what feeds Te Waikoropupū Springs.
The springs are outstanding internationally. They're the clearest water ever measured in a karst spring, and then there's the volume. So a combination of beautifully clear water, terrific volume, amongst the biggest in the southern hemisphere, makes them internationally important. The reason the water is so clear is essentially because it's been underground for such a long time.
Nitrate is a byproduct of farming. Farmers use synthetic nitrogen to stimulate crop growth. This nitrogen is spread upon the ground where it rests until it is picked up by plants or washed away. Use of synthetic nitrogen fertiliser allows for too many cows for the assimilative capacity of the aquifer. When the plants are eaten by farm animals, the nitrogen in the grass either goes into making protein or is excreted as urine. The cow urine patch is the most critical source of nitrogen. There is more nitrogen in a urine patch than can be picked up by plants, especially in winter. The excess nitrogen becomes soluble, and this soluble form is called nitrate. Nitrate either washes over the ground into waterways and tomos, or leaches into the ground and enters the aquifer. The excess nitrate entering the springs is largely from dairy cows. The more cows urinating on the paddocks, the more nitrate in the springs. Some land users, particularly irrigated dairy, contribute far more nitrate than others, and this should be the priority for reduction to protect the springs.
Well, the risk is that we're just beginning to realise it's getting contaminated. We've been measuring the quality of the water now since about the 1970s. And over 50 years, it's gone from, in round figures, 0.3 to 0.5. In other words, nearly double, not quite, in the nitrogen that was in the water.
It's a problem because of what they call the stegofauna. They are the little creatures in the aquifer. We had our best science in New Zealand proving that they're there and what the job that they do.
There's lots of little critters that live underground. They look like shrimps. And these eat organic material to stay alive because they live in a dark habitat. So every little speck of organic material that gets underground can be consumed by these organisms.
the evidence, we have to be very, very careful, because if we kill off the stegofauna, the clarity of the waters will be lost.
There comes a point when too much chemicals in the water will affect the organisms that are not used to living in too much nitrogen and pesticides and so on. And the other thing, of course, is this water comes up at the springs. And so all the plant growth in the springs expands enormously. There's a flush of watercress and one thing another. And so that contaminates the waterways as well as affecting the biota underground.
As the pollution increases in the aquifer, so does the growth rates of this algae. Now, the council at first disputed the trends in nitrates, then they disputed the correlation between nitrates and the growth rate of this weed. And then they went on to say that this is not a problem ecologically. It might look a bit mangy, but it's, you know, mostly an aesthetic problem, failing to recognize that almost 100,000 people come here purely for the aesthetics.
The waters bubble up, and if you're aware of the mauri of the whare tangata for a woman, that energy, that life energy, then anything that comes up out of the ground like that is likened to the amniotic fluids, the life-giving fluids of a mother. And so just like over in the Riuwaka, there's a taniwha, her name is Huriawa, everybody say Huriawa. Huriawa. And Huriawa is in charge of keeping those underground waterways open.
And we know, because water goes in brown and flows out clear, that there is an intermediary, a measureless host of the unseen, who ask nothing of us, nothing, except we keep our nitrate out, because it threatens their simple working life of cleaning and cleansing the aquifer, and endangers the crystalline gush of Te Waikoropupū. So a water conservation order is the highest level of protection New Zealand can give a body of water. So the community came together across Golden Bay, and there were amazing kind of response from just ordinary Kiwis who put money together, who spent time, particularly testing the amount of nitrate that was coming out at the springs. They proved through their testing that the levels were rising and critically endangering the springs. That evidence was brought to the court, and the court accepted it. I am concerned that local government should have been doing this testing, and the Tasman District Council is in charge of doing that, and they didn't do it well at all. In fact, they did very poorly, and I'd use the word scandalous in terms of their the readings that they were giving over a series of years. They tested 4 times a year, every 3 months, and they had these kind of a pattern, a regular pattern, but sometimes like great spikes in them here and great spikes in them there. And they didn't know why that was happening. They were completely mystified by it. And they call them out-ears. They were out of the normal, these spikes. And the judge commented on this, the court commented on it. There were evidence given. It's very likely that this was poor testing by the Tasman District Council testers. They failed in their duty to give accurate information to the New Zealand public.
The only reason community groups and NGOs have to fight tooth and nail, fundraise and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees to prove that these natural areas are worth protecting is because our government, point blank, refuses to defend its own rules.
I feel indignant actually about the Tasman District Council and their failure to do the job that they're supposed to be doing, that they're mandated to do by law. The law is very simple. They're not to allow waterways to get worse. And they've allowed that to happen under the nose of the public. Instead of that, to actually change this situation, everyday Kiwis have had to reach in their back pockets, have had to volunteer time and energy to do the work that the Tasman District Council didn't do. Frankly, they're an abject failure in this area. Very, very disappointed with them, but at the same time, just super proud of those Kiwis who've got up and done the job that the Tasman District Council should have been doing.
Water conservation orders have been called the equivalent of national parks for our rivers, but they don't provide nearly the same legal protection that national park status does. Fish and Game has been a common applicant for water conservation orders, and there are a lot applied for because regional councils weren't doing their job under the Resource Management Act and ensuring that wild rivers were protected with adequate flows. One of the shortcomings with water conservation orders is that they don't affect how the land and the catchment is managed. Te Waikoropū Lake Ellesmere is critically important as a mahinga kai and a food basket for ngai tahu, but nobody swims there now because it's so polluted. It's at the bottom of the catchment, and all of the intensive agriculture and the nutrient pollution that's filtered into springs, into lowland streams and through the aquifers into the lake has really harmed the lake. Te Waikoropū Lake Ellesmere in its current state shows that water conservation orders on their own don't work. You need that commitment to the health of the lake and land use change to have a healthy waterway.
The next steps after the water conservation order is that the farming community come together and they work together to reduce their use of synthetic nitrate fertiliser to undo the work that basically has been done. That's the first thing. That's got to be overseen by the Tasman District Council. There needs to be funding for that, which has been provided in the water conservation order. The council will need to get together with the tangata whenua, Ngāti Tama, mana whenua ki mohua. They need to have meaningful consultations about protecting the springs. And folks like myself, Save Our Springs and others, need to be just keeping a watch on the whole program.
No farmer wants to muck up the environment. They want to leave the land in good shape for the next generation. Every society hopes they're doing the right thing, living the way they're doing. Because we've learned some things have not gone as well as they should have done, some people are quite shocked to see the effect, which they honestly didn't realise. Others, no doubt, look the other way, even if they knew they weren't doing it quite right. But the general feeling I sense is there is a willingness to improve.
It is a message of hope. I do believe that sometimes things in life get very, very dark, and we have to go through dark times before we discover light on the other side of that. And what I've seen at Te Waikoropupū is, and in the aquifer, it's just that is an image of what is happening at the springs, that this dirty old water comes in, and I was kind of like that, dirty old water, and I kind of came into this place, and I went into this deep place with deep waters, and I came through the other side of that after a period of time, and out through the deep, deep darkness and struggle, and then I came up the other side, and I was changed. There was a clarity in my life that had never been there before. So I see the springs as being an image of that journey down into the waters, into the depths, into the darkness, and then up out of the other side of it, into a place of clarity and rebirth.
From what I've learned in the last 4 or 5 years I've been involved in this court case, this water conservation order, is there is a genuine evolution of understanding taking place in the community. And I'm really quite heartened by it.
I think somewhere in the way that we're thinking, in the way that we're behaving, especially our connection to Papatūānuku, we got to make a change. And my tono to you fellas is that the change isn't going to come from my generation. We're too happy with our steak. We're too happy with our lamb. I don't really want to give it up. I might have to though, yeah? But you've got to find a way to normalise those things that then become helpful to Papatūānuku, that then become helpful to these waterways, these places, so that we can return to another normal, your normal from your tupuna, your ancestors, even your grandparents. I bet there's places in New Zealand where your grandparents used to swim that they can't take you to anymore because the water's pariu, yeah? And so to honour our grandparents, to make those changes, to bring it back, then there has to be change.
I think the battle to protect Te Waikoropupū is a frontline battle in the sense that Te Waikoropupū Springs are actually obviously to be a brilliant natural phenomena. The Maori people call this a living being, and that's what I experience there. It's a very, very special place.
After years of campaigning, the country's largest freshwater springs have been given the highest level of protection from the government. Te Waikoropupū Springs near Takaka in the Tasman region contain some of the clearest water ever measured. Here's Nelson-based reporter Jessica Roden.
On the surface, it's impressive, but it's what's below that is truly special.
The clearness of the water, it's quite breathtaking.
It's very nice now, yeah, beautiful.
Te Waikoropupū Springs are the largest cold water springs in the southern hemisphere. Visibility is up to 81 metres here, which makes it the second clearest water in the country after Blue Lake, which is also here in Tasman. The springs are of great spiritual significance to local iwi Ngāti Tama. Years of campaigning has led to the government today announcing further protection.
Water conservation order is quite rare. We haven't had one put in place for over 10 years.
It's been a massive experience of human people just coming together to protect something deeply sacred to them, and it's been protected.
A recent Environment Court hearing found the springs were at significant risk from human-induced pollution. The order means there will be restrictions on activities and future consents which could impact water quality. Farmers and irrigators are supportive but still have some questions.
What we don't really fully understand is what happens through the soil, how all of that comes together in the aquifer, and then how that sort of transpires at Te Waikoropupū in terms of water quality measurements and particularly nitrogen.
More research and changes to council planning will be needed to ensure compliance with the order.
It is quite a spiritual thing. I don't think people can appreciate that you can have water of such clarity, such purity, and have open access to it.
Purity now hopefully guaranteed for generations to come. Jessica Roden, One News.